Welcome to the Gail Kelly Outstanding Dissertation Awards ceremony. It's my pleasure to welcome you all today. My name is Supriya Bailey, and I'm the president of CIES. Today, we are honoring one of our nominees, one of our awardees for this award that is selected by a number of different subcommittees. And these subcommittees work incredibly hard during the whole year to identify the best candidates that we have that have been nominated for different awards. But none of this would happen without the work of the awards committee chair, who handles all of this over the course of the year. And it is my pleasure today to welcome Kara Janigan, Professor Kara Janigan, from the Ontario Institute of Studies in Education at the University of Toronto. I have known Kara for a number of years, and I'm incredibly grateful for her involvement and leadership on this committee. Kara has specialized in issues of gender and education as a curriculum developer, as a teacher, educator, an evaluator, and a researcher. She's currently a principal investigator for a grant from the Global Partnership for Education, Knowledge and Innovation Exchange project being conducted in Ghana, Honduras, and Nicaragua. That's called Improving Literacy for Children through the Support of Community Networks. She is a phenomenal scholar, researcher, and she's written 5 book chapters on gender and education. And it is my pleasure to turn this over to her today to talk more about the award and introduce the subcommittee chair. Thank you very much. Kara?
Thank you very much, Supriya. So it's my honor today to be in this ceremony, and I want to echo Supriya's thanks to the subcommittee. And this subcommittee is for the Gail P. Kelly Award, which recognizes an outstanding doctoral dissertation dealing with social justice and equity issues in an international and/or comparative context, and honors the memory of the distinguished comparative educator, Gail P. Kelly, and her many contributions to CIES and our field, including serving as the CIES president in 1986. So now it's my honor to introduce the chair of the subcommittee, who has done a phenomenal job in working with the committee members and reviewing and then selecting the award winner that we are presenting today. Her name is Dr. Stephanie Simon-Zulkowski. She holds a joint appointment at the Florida State University College of Education. She's an associate professor of international and multicultural education in the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies, and associate director for research in the Learning Systems Institute. In addition, her research aims to improve basic education in sub-Saharan Africa, including school quality, early literacy outcomes, and teacher implementation of policy. In addition to all that work as a professor and associate director, she is also the project director of the USAID Transforming Teacher Education activity in Zambia. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, Kara. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Simmons-Lakowski, and I'm the chair of the Gail P. Kelly subcommittee this year. I'd like to take a moment to recognize and thank the members of the committee. Nathan Castillo from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Lizzie Warden from American University, David Wanza from the University of Zambia, and Pierre de Galbert from Brown University. The committee had a very difficult task this year because the submitted dissertations were excellent and spanned the full range of the field in terms of both topics and methodologies. The committee selected 2 dissertations as honorable mentions, in addition to selecting the winner. The first honorable mention goes to Dr. Celia Reddick, whose dissertation is titled Language for an Unknowable Future: How Language Ideologies and Pedagogies Shape the Lives of Refugee Children. The second honorable mention goes to Dr. Emily Dunlop, whose dissertation is titled Education Access and Perceived Inequality After War: Building Peace Through Continuity and Change in Post-War Burundi. And the winner of the 2023 Gail P. Kelly Award is Dr. Hangmin Lee, whose dissertation is titled The Racial Grammar of South-South Cooperation: Vietnamese Development Experts in Mozambique. The committee felt Dr. Lee's dissertation makes a real contribution to the field, as South-South development cooperation is an understudied topic. As Dr. Lee writes, quote, Vietnamese development experts have been largely invisible in normative accounts of international development and education aid, end quote. Her work examines the racial dimensions of the international aid system, showing how racial hierarchies persist and inform the power dynamics of aid, even within a South-South framework. Her work is both critical and timely, and the committee looks forward to reading more of Dr. Lee's work in the future. At this point, I'll hand it over to Dr. Lee for her to tell us a bit more about her work. Congratulations, Dr. Lee.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zukowski. So first of all, I want to extend a huge thank you to the Comparative and International Education Society, to the awards committee, and of course the members of the Gail Kelly Award Subcommittee for giving me this amazing recognition and opportunity. It is an incredible honor for me to be receiving this Gail P. Kelly Award for my dissertation research. I still remember years ago when I first arrived in the United States for undergraduate education. I got a student job in the college library, and then one day when I was shelving the books, I came across this volume called French Colonial Education, Essays on Vietnam and West Africa by Professor Gail Paradise Kelly. So of course, as an international student from Vietnam, I had to borrow it. And for me, it's just been amazing to reflect on the formative influence of Professor Kelly's work on me as I began to develop critical perspective about the politics of education from then to now. And then at this point, to be receiving this award bearing her name for one of the most major milestones in my intellectual life, it's really hard for me to describe just how fully honored I am. Another scholar that I want to thank is my nominator, my committee chair and advisor, Professor Stephen Cleese, who is just the best advisor that anyone can ever ask for. I am very grateful to Professor Cleese for his constant and tireless support and for just always saying, go for it, whenever I ask him if I should pursue a new opportunity or interest, whether it is in research or in the field. And above all, I really want to thank Professor Cleese from the bottom of my heart for teaching me that another world is indeed possible and that there are plenty of alternatives. I'm also very grateful to CIES for just providing such a supportive and nurturing community to emerging scholars like me. I have been attending the annual meeting since my first year as a doctoral student, and I am thankful for all of the countless encounters that I have had with new ideas, new colleagues, new opportunities, including just amazing supportive system, such as the dissertation mentoring workshop that I was able to participate in 2021. And it was also very amazing for me to call the University of Maryland my home for my graduate education. I want to thank all of my committee members, Professors Beth Cohen, Professor Jing Lin, Michelle Rowley, Zina Zakaria, and Mark Ginsberg, who are just all amazing inspirational figures as scholars, practitioners, and activists. And of course, I also have to thank all of my friends and family for their amazing support and for keeping me sane during the years of working on this dissertation. And last, but certainly not least, this study could not have been done without my participants. So I want to thank them for sharing with me their stories and for letting me tell the story to the world, the story of Vietnamese development experts in Mozambique. So since the 1980s, thousands of Vietnamese teachers, doctors, agronomists, and engineers have been sent to Mozambique from Vietnam as part of this bilateral expert exchange program between the two governments. As Dr. Zukowski mentioned before, these Vietnamese development experts have been largely invisible in our current scholarship on international development and education aid. So it is for this reason that I decided to conduct the study. Through highlighting their voices and centering the racial dynamics in this development encounter, I wanted to examine whether and how this Vietnamese Mozambican exchange program can model more ethical forms of engaging in international aid and cooperation, which I think is a very key question of concern for all of the scholars in our field of comparative and international education. So South-South cooperation, or SSC for short, has certainly gained a lot of attention in recent years as a possible alternative to the widespread issues in development aid. For those on the mainstream, the South can seem like a very promising ground of best practices that can be transferred to similar contexts of developing countries. And then also for the critic of development aid, the South can also be a source of diverse local knowledges and basically the ground for resistance to Western hegemony. And unlike traditional aid from the global North, with all of its conditionalities, South-South cooperation is supposed to be based on non-interference and mutual benefits. And this can, at first glance, appear to be quite a desirable alternative to the traditional Western and neo-colonial models of foreign aid. But the literature on the reality of South-South cooperation cases has consistently revealed the frictions that can underlie that rhetoric of global South solidarity, such as the reproduction of colonial and racist stereotypes about each other, and also numerous incidents of xenophobia and hostility on the ground. So in this study, I de-romanticized South-South cooperation and conceptualized the exchange of Vietnamese development experts to Mozambique as a double encounter. So on one hand, it is indeed a South-South development encounter rooted in socialist commitment to anti-imperial solidarity. But on the other hand, it is also an Asian-Black racial encounter. And in so doing, it bears the weight of global racial imaginaries, grounded particularly in development aid as a racist enterprise. Here, I am using grammar as a framing device, and I'm arguing that racism operates as a social grammar of development. This is to draw attention to how grammar is a socially constructed system of rules ordering our experience and our world. Everyone participates in using it, including the oppressed. Yet, while grammar is pervasive, one hardly ever sees it or recognizes that it is currently working. And indeed, like grammar, the racism of development is embedded in its structure of the development teleology that carries an implicit hierarchy on who can count as developed and who continue to be the backward other. The racialization of the other is also quite visible in the typical narratives and discourses that we hear in international development aid. So these are often deficit-based stories that seek to explain underdevelopment in a way that attributes the blame to the people of the global South, blaming them for being lazy or being backward and so on. Alternatively, they can also be just taken for granted stories and assumptions that the people in the global South are just helpless victims that need the assistance of the global North. And then going, and I guess sort of as a result of those kind of taken for granted hegemonic narratives, then racism also becomes just intertwined and manifested at the micro level, the everyday practice of development. So this is about, for example, the unequal treatment of white versus non-white development practitioners, or the way that usually white development experts inhabit a very segregated social world from the very communities that they are supposed to be helping. And so this study explored how Vietnamese Mozambican expert exchange transcend or conform to this existing racial grammar of development. And what I found was that, so this program is definitely not your typical development program at all. First of all, because this is an intergovernmental bilateral program, the Vietnamese experts are directly hired on usually 3-year contracts to work under Mozambique's different ministries, government agencies, or even at the level of individual schools. And so unlike a traditional aid program, the power balance between the two sides does seem to be more equal. And the Mozambican side in particular has significant power over this partnership, including choosing where they want assistance, when they want the contract of the expert to end, and so on. And as for the Vietnamese experts, they are not coming in with some kind of savior complex, which is a very common critique of white Western development practitioners. Rather, they are quite honest that usually the main objective is just to earn money in order to help their own family back home. And much of the experts' narratives center on the difficulties and struggles that they face in Mozambique. So this can include the struggle of leaving their entire family behind, the poor living conditions, the sense of isolation, particularly with the language barrier as the main challenge for both their professional and personal lives in Mozambique. And this is even though all of them have to gain the advanced proficiency level in Portuguese before entering Mozambique. And the kind of stories that they share reflect a fundamental dimension of their self-identities, that they were people who could and would bear these kind of hardships. And this central sense of identity also carries into their perception of why Mozambique invited them here. So in their own meaning making, they feel that it's not just for what they know and their experience, but also for the country of origin on their passport, which somehow allows them to be cheaper experts. So they feel that they were hired because they can bear the living situations and they would not demand as high of income or accommodation level as they directly named it, the Western white experts. And these ideas of the West and white people being better were just very casually embedded in the Vietnamese experts' narratives throughout. And in contrast, the narratives about Mozambican colleagues and students would be predominantly made from a deficit perspective. And then there are also just quite curious overarching comments about Mozambique, like, does it not feel like Vietnam of 30 years ago? So this was a question that was constantly repeated to me. And this kind of temporal comparison reveals how ingrained the chronopolitics of development are in these experts' worldviews. So they assume that there's one linear path of progress to development. And on this path, the Vietnamese experts position themselves as being ahead of Mozambicans in that sense. And this is also reflected in the structural program itself of how, even though there have been many Vietnamese experts sent to Mozambique since 2009, but only one Mozambican have been sent to Vietnam to teach Portuguese. And again, all of it reveals just how ingrained these kind of structural inequalities are in aid programs, even in these cases where the people delivering aid is not the typical villain of the white development expert that we currently have in the literature. So I think this certainly provides a new dimension to our current efforts in the field to just rethinking development aid in education as a whole.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, and congratulations again. I'd like to thank you in particular for pushing us to think more broadly about our field, which is exactly what new scholars should be doing. Thank you so much. Back over to you, Kara.
I also want to congratulate you, Dr. Lee, and thank you very much for pointing out the connection to Gail P. Kelly's work. That's really fascinating, and I really look forward to reading your dissertation. Back to you, Supriya.
Dr. Lee, I want to just recall a moment that we had when you attended the CIES 2017 symposium. And you and your colleagues from University of Maryland presented an amazing paper there and went on to publish a book chapter in the book that came out after the symposium. And I can see the path that it set you on. That was an incredible piece of work, and it continues to be that you do some amazing work. So congratulations on this award. You are so deserving, and your work sounds fascinating. And I have no doubt that sometime in the future, some student is going to pull out a dissertation and she's going to potentially read your work, and it might change it might change the trajectory of their lives. So that's what this award is supposed to do. And so very excited to read it. And thank you again to Dr. Ziolkowski and Dr. Janigan for the work that they've done in terms of elevating this amazing research. So thank you all.